Is there a real alarm happening behind the scenes that the president is simply too old to stake around for another 4 years?
No, there's no alarm happening behind the scenes. It's not about age. It's about the president's experience. That's what we believe. And it's, as they say, the proof is in the pudding. I would put the president's stamina, president's wisdom, ability to get this done on behalf of the American people against anyone on any day of the week.
And as poll after poll shows, plunging prospects for Joe Biden in 2024. His party, they're in panic mode. The Washington Post even quoted one anonymous Biden fundraiser admitting the bad news is that everybody is wetting the bed inside of Biden world.
Let's bring in host of the Ben Ferguson podcast and co-host of Verdict with Ted Cruz, that podcast. Ben Ferguson, along with New York Post, hello, along with New York Post political reporter John Levine. Ben, so this is the bed that Joe Biden made and the Democrats made, that he is just an old, privileged white dude. This is the patriarchy, right? Yeah. Why don't they kick him out of the bed that he made? He is clinging on with those claws.
Now let's be clear. He doesn't actually make his bed anymore. He's too old for that. But I will say happy birthday to the president. I hear that the White House staff gave him extra nap time today to celebrate. So there's that. That's a big accomplishment. Remember, his schedule on average, didn't they say at the White House? It's from noon to 4 o'clock. That's when you get your best work done. They don't really do things outside that. I don't care, and I mean this sincerely, how old you are. I care how competent you are, and I think that's what the majority of Americans care about. Ronald Reagan is a great example of that. And you look at Joe Biden now. I said the other day on my show, go back and look at Joe Biden just during the election cycle when he was up against Donald Trump, and watch one of those tapes. Pick any one you want and look at him compared to today. The cognitive decline is massive, and the rest of the world is seeing this. We saw this in California this past week, where it was like, where do I stand? What am I doing? Looking over to the side at his staff, like, am I in charge of the world? Am I supposed to be the one standing here now? Am I supposed to go that way? I mean, it was embarrassing on the world stage to witness it. And if you're a voter right now and you look at this decline of this president, how on earth can you imagine that he could do it for another 5 years from this point moving forward? It's a 5 years and a month and a half that this president would have to serve. That is insanity to think he could do it.
Ben, but the point is well made. It's not his age. It's actually the failing of his policies. And if you have this kind of a record that Joe Biden has had, you'd be embarrassed and you'd say, listen, I've failed. I'm going to step aside. I'm going to let someone else step forward and take the reins. But Joe Biden has never been in politics about his constituents. Not in Delaware, not in America. Yeah. Joe Biden has always been about Joe Biden and the Biden family. So when we talk about, is Joe Biden going to go for the nomination? Of course he is. He's never going to step aside. Sure. John?
This is a guy that, by the way, thinks that the economy is actually good right now. That's how bad Joe Biden is. He actually is selling Bidenomics right now, which has been a failure, and every stat backs it up.
Absolutely. John, go ahead.
Right. I can't really say I was surprised by the reporting about the alleged bedwetting that's happening in the White House. You know, as you've noted, he's 81 years old. He'll be 86 years old at the end of his second term. And this only goes in one direction. Time only goes in one direction. It's incredible. It's really a miracle of modern medicine that he's president at all. But, like, you know, I'm watching a fall you just put on screen there. Mm-hmm. My grandmother was about his age when she took a fall like that, and she was in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. And Biden is at the age where we're one fall away, we're one major gaffe away where we could be in a real situation. My grandmother was playing slot machines in Atlantic City. He is the leader of the free world. So we can't have a president who's on such thin ice. And as Ben said, other countries are watching this. I can't help but remember how tranquil the world was under the previous administration. The second this individual takes office, all of a sudden we have war in Ukraine, war in the Middle East, China's looking at Taiwan. These are major, major international flashpoints that cry out for American leadership. And if we don't have it, our enemies will see that.
But we're not in this place because of his age. To Sean's point, we're in this place because of his policies, and anybody who might step in his shoes would bring the same policy and the same catastrophe to America's shores. But I want to move on to Democrats finding themselves the target of anti-Israel protests yet again, this time activists shutting down the California Democrat Convention in the state's capital over the weekend. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre admitting today that the Biden administration has no plan to address the internal rift.
What does the White House make of Democrats, and particularly young people, who say they do not approve of the president's handling of the Israel-Hamas war?
So look, as I'm going to be mindful, right, because there's going to be a number of polls that are going to be coming out, which, obviously, which we respect. But what I'll be very clear about is we're not going to govern by polls here. We're going to, or poll numbers. We're going to focus on delivering for the American people. That's going to be our focus.
John Levine, Joe Biden in word might be supporting Israel, but indeed, he's funding indirectly Hamas through money that they have willingly sent to Iran. So they can protest all they want, but hey, he's on both sides.
I think President Biden in his heart is a Zionist. He's always said that, and he's always been very, very pro-Israel. And he comes from the wing of the Democratic Party that's always been solid on Israel, but the party has changed. And he is trying to now play both sides of the fence. I'll draw your attention to a recent poll which showed that 57% of American Muslims said they thought what Hamas did in Israel on October 7th was justified. That's a crazy statistic. And, when you're President Biden and the Democratic Party, you're looking at states like Michigan with very, very large Muslim populations, and you're trying to wonder how pro-Israel can you be without alienating voters you need to win that state. So he is forced to kind of play, as I said, both sides of the fence. Obviously, he's indirectly funding Hamas through payments to Iran. He's trying to restart the Iran deal through which President Obama's original failure to bring Iran out of the cold. And he can't really declare a side. I mean, he's unable to project moral clarity. If you want to see moral clarity in this conflict, I'd urge you to read the New York Post or watch this network, where there is unambiguously a good guy and a bad guy. Hamas are a terrorist organization. They slaughtered 1,200 people. And there's no two sides of this. And I think it's a historic mistake to claim that there is.
And Ben, I don't think for Biden you can't mend this bridge. You're not going to build, agreement between the two sides within his party. So I think they're right. They have to sit back and go, you know what? They're going to fight it out. We're going to do what we're going to do. And we're going to hope that no matter what happens, how raw people's feelings are in this party, they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. They're not going to vote for a Republican. They're going to come back home. Yeah. The worst case scenario is they may not show up, but they're not going to be Republican voters.
Yeah, this is the chickens coming home to roost for the Democrats. They have bred this culture of what I refer to as socialism and communism. The Democratic Party is dead. And you can see it in this next generation, which is turning on Joe Biden and these traditional Democrats who understand that there at least was good and evil in the world. And now there's this college campus mentality, which is America is evil. They've been indoctrinated to believe that. So therefore, anything that America says they stand for, stand with Israel, is evil too. And you look at them attacking the Democratic National Committee the other day, you look at them shutting down roads. This is all coming out of Black Lives Matter, right? They were taught by the Democratic Party, when you don't get your way, you shut down government, you burn buildings, you riot, you loot, and you do it in the name of social justice. This is BLM 2.0 that you're witnessing right now. And I think the scary part for Democrats is they made a deal with the devil when they tried to turn their party and young people into these socialist activists. And now they're coming back. They're not attacking Republicans. They're attacking the Democratic National Committee building when there were congressmen inside. And look at last week's vote in the Senate. There was a vote where every Democrat voted against emergency military aid to Israel. It only would have taken one Democrat to go with Republicans to get that aid to Israel, and not a single Democrat in the Senate had the guts to stand with Israel because they're so afraid of the 35 and under crowd, which are straight up socialists and communists.
They are little commies, no doubt about that, because they went to commie camp, which is college.
Yeah.
All right, Ben, John, always a pleasure. Thank you both for joining us. We appreciate it.